Earlier this week I made a video talking about snipers inside of Fallout 76 and just being really excited and happy and over the moon that you can actually play as a sniper in that game now, and it feels good, it's effective, it's great. They made amazing changes and I'm still very happy about it. It did make me wonder though what other types of builds are now viable, and if every single type of build can kind of work in the game. Because the last time I played, there was always really just a couple of builds that everyone gravitated towards, and anything else was noticeably weaker and just didn't stand a chance. But now that snipers are, if not amazing, just good enough to work, I wanted to test if every build can work. And for this, when I'm talking about builds being viable, I don't mean, oh, I got the perfect legendary RNG for just an amazing weapon which fits in perfectly, and I know what every perk does, and I've spent 100,000 hours on the game with my level 10,000 character. No. I'm talking about actual viable builds for more casual players like myself. People who just occasionally jump into the game, don't know every single mechanic and all the intricacies, and just have some kind of generic legendary weapons to work with for the most part. I wanted to test if every build could be viable for the majority of players. In total, I thought up 10 different build archetypes, which I feel cover pretty much everything, and anything else I could think of was just a mix of these or more specific version of these, so I'm going to go over all 10 of them and just tell you how my experience was testing them all out. First up, Sniper, which I already covered in my last video. It's great, I love it so much. Not having to deal with range damage drop-off is just perfect. It's thousands of damage a headshot, that's the way snipers should be. They're balanced by the low fire rate and actually having to be accurate. I think it's a very balanced playstyle to go for overall, as while it is one of the highest damage that you can potentially have, it's also got its limitations. Very good. Watch my last video if you want to hear more about them. Build number 2, Gunslinger. And I actually already did this one too. So before I made my sniper video, I'd been playing as my Ghoul Slinger, my Ghoul Cowboy build, and I made a whole build video about it. It's just like a single action kind of revolver build that headshots a bunch of enemies. And all the basics of it remained the same after this update. I did play a little bit in the update, I don't have footage of that because it was right before I switched to sniping, and it just works fine still. It's a fun little build. I went with a very thematic one and it worked fine. I do think VATS is very much the way to go for this, though theoretically you can play outside of VATS. It's just a fair sight trickier. It's another solid one. It's like a sniper build but more VATS focused and closer range. Ta-da! Go watch my build video if you want that. I've already seen you 2 other videos. But anyone who's still remaining, we're on to build number 3, Commando. Now for all of the rest of these are ones that I tested recently, literally just the other day, so I'm going to start off by showing you my perks that I've got so you can judge me for how badly I've built my builds, and my weapons so you can laugh at me for my terrible RNG. I will say, however, that Commando was my main build for most of Fallout 76's life cycle. For the majority of the time, Commando, even if it wasn't the strongest, was always good enough that it could kind of be in the top half of build types. So I've been playing Commando pretty much all the time in 76, so I at least had some decent experience already with it. And in the latest update, it's very strong at close to medium range, but a little weaker at long range, which is as it should be, and as it used to be pretty much as well. It's a case of, yeah, this is a pretty decent close range, pretty decent mid-range, a little weaker at long range, but it's not like a waste of bullets to shoot at something that's far away. It's overall just a very solid, versatile and easy to play sort of build. You just shoot the enemies, you hold down the trigger till they die, you can aim down sights for a bit more accuracy, or you can hit fire if they're up close. It's quite easy to get on with. Commando's nothing special or fancy, but it works. It just works. It just works. It's Todd Howard's build. Todd Howard exclusively plays Commando. And I get it, it's simple. Heavy Gunner is up next, and once again I will start off by showing you all of my perks, which should be on screen right now, and then I'll switch over to the weapons I've used. So you can see that I basically had a minigun for close range, and a 50 cal machine gun for long range. Imagine both of those with air quotes, which I just did. So, you know that they're both fairly close range. Like, Heavy Gunners is not a long range build, really. It's more so mid-range. I'd say it's a very good mid-range character to go for. I also decided to go for power armor in this one. There is some little bits of synergy here and there between big guns and power armor, which I very much like, because it fits, it makes sense. So many of the changes have been quite thematic, and I love that. As someone who builds their characters and stuff all around like a theme, it's always love it. And Heavy Gunner was... Heavy Gunner was, if you found Commando too complicated, Heavy Gunner's the way to go. Because you point and shoot, everything eventually dies. You just hold down the trigger while facing the general direction of the enemy, and as long as you've got enough bullets, the enemy will die. Might take a minute if it's really tough, but you just keep shooting. You keep shooting, and they die. There's also a ghoul perk, Wild West something, I've forgotten the name of it now, that's annoying. But there's a ghoul perk in the luck tree which gives you a chance to instantly reload, and that synergizes surprisingly well with the huge ammo magazine size of these weapons, plus the bullet stacking thing, which means that you don't want to reload or you lose your bullet stacks, which loses out on some benefits. So the longer you can shoot for, the more powerful you get. And I will say it does actually feel like a bit of a power fantasy, but without being ridiculously overpowered. Like, I had a couple of pretty strong weapons for this. I actually had good random weapons in my stash. I've got a stash filled with weapons. These were a few of the good ones, fortunately, so I felt pretty strong, but I didn't feel so ridiculously strong that I felt every other build was paling in comparison. I will say it's pretty much the best DPS build around is Heavy Gunner from what I found, just because you fire out so many shots so fast. But that also means it's quite costly in terms of ammunition, and this genuinely might be the only build there is where you actually have to craft ammo regularly, because you're going to be spending up quite a bit, and while the game now does give you ammunition from basically everything you kill, you're probably going to spend more than you get back. So there is a downside to Heavy Gunner, but it is real quite strong. It's strong. And for all those fans of strong and strength, we got melee up next. My perks are going to be very strength and endurance based, like the strength tree. So many different perks. Honestly, this is the one build archetype where I think there might be too many specific perks around melee, especially because they're basically all in the strength tree. And I'm someone who has a lot of stuff they need to carry around with them, so I've always got at least 4 points of my strength dedicated to just carry weight perks, so I'm not permanently over encumbered. And it feels like if you do want to be a melee character, you're gonna struggle with carry weight potentially. But here's the weapons I used as well. I had a few different ones, both fast, smaller ones and big, heavy ones, so I could get a bit of a different feel of things. But with all the different perks, I don't think it matters too much. I was finding that most enemies died, or standard enemies died, within 1 or 2 attacks, so I was dealing, plenty of damage. You don't want a melee build where you have to hit an enemy 20 times to take them down. It's fine with a fast-firing weapon, but even with a fast melee weapon, 2 or 3 hits should be the maximum. Most of my attacks seem to be dealing over 1,000 damage, which was pretty good seeing as I'm not a strength character, I'm not super built that way. There's a certain amount I can do with this, but going feral as a ghoul would have made me significantly stronger, but I couldn't do that without waiting for hours on end and ditching a legendary perk and all of that sort of stuff. So the fact that I was still dealing over 1,000 damage is pretty promising. Overall though, I'm just not a huge fan of melee. It very much feels like I'm just kind of swinging wildly, and the impact isn't really there. I think this is a big Fallout problem, because Bethesda's just not great with melee combat. It's not terrible, but it always feels a bit clunky to me, and it's not got that satisfying impact that so many other, especially fantasy games have. It's just, melee always feels a bit meh. Overall, I definitely preferred the quicker weapons. I think the cutlass that I was using, the Commander's Charge I believe it is, was lots of fun, because it's much faster, feels much lighter, so not quite as clunky, and mixing the bleed effect of the weapon with the Bloody Mess perk was lots of fun, because you hit an enemy, they bleed, and when they die, there's a good chance they explode into blood and hurt things around them. and that was the fun side of Melee. Overall, it does seem like a pretty strong playstyle, and one that definitely could be made a lot stronger quite easily just by stacking a few extra buffs, but not one that I personally enjoyed. It's good, just not for me. May as well talk about Unarmed now, as that's very similar to Melee. I'll show you the perks here, of which only a few really have changed. This is going to be the most similar perk layout of all of them. And in terms of weapons I used, I didn't have any unarmed weapons in my stash. I had to craft myself a legendary power fist, which fortunately I had a recipe for and the materials, and then noticed, oh hey, I could craft Unstoppable Monster, which used to be like the go-to weapons for a while. However, I had to go Deathclaw hunting because I didn't have a Deathclaw hand, and when I killed this Deathclaw, it didn't have a Deathclaw hand on it. I'm pretty certain I can see its Deathclaw hands right now. But eventually I was able to craft Unstoppable Monster as well, and had a couple of different unarmed weapons to test out. And things went great with testing. It's basically a better version of Melee. I will say my opinion may have been influenced a bit by the fact I was dressed up as Charlie the Moo Moo, which definitely made it feel even better. But overall it's very similar to feeling to Melee and similar design and stuff, but it just feels a bit cooler. It doesn't feel like I'm swinging wildly. I've been thinking about this for a while, and I still can't think of how exactly to describe why Melee just seems wrong to me and Unarmed feels good. I'm not sure what it is, but it feels so much better. Overall, it is just a better version of Melee in my opinion, and not just for the feeling. There's also fewer perks which are Unarmed specific. There's so many different Melee ones, but for Unarmed, you have Iron Fist, which now makes it so that you deal more damage based on your damage resistance, a change I love, and which both Kado Genesis and I have talked about a lot and wanted that exact thing to happen. Kado publicly asked for it on our podcast we do, the Pipcast 3000. He asked for that change, and it's happened, and it's brilliant. So yeah, Unarmed just better than Melee in my opinion. I'd definitely play it again, but I wouldn't want to play Melee again, so yeah, if you enjoy Melee, give Unarmed a try. Time to talk about shotguns now. Here are my perks. There's quite a few shotgun focused ones, which is very nice to see, and in terms of weapons, I had a few different shotguns to go for, though I will say all of them feel pretty similar. Probably didn't help that I had the exact same magazine capacity on all of them, which felt funny seeing as one was a double barrel and one was a combat shotgun. Feels like those should have different ammo capacities. I will say with shotguns, this was the little playstyle that felt the most inconsistent. All the other builds, it was like, okay, if I hit the enemy, I'm going to deal roughly this much damage, like, I'll deal like 100 damage a shot, or 1,000 damage a melee hit, that sort of thing. Whereas with shotguns, sometimes I was like, oh damn, I'm super strong and really powerful, and other times I'd be like, oh, I sneezed at them, great. I think that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is a lot harder to kind of get used to, especially as someone a bit more new to shotguns. That being said, when you do get the one-shot kills, so satisfying. And if you do want to get a lot of those one-shot kills and just be a bit more consistent, I think VATS is better than manual aiming. I'm someone who gravitates more towards manual aiming than I do VATS-based combat, mostly because of 95% chance, which is screwed me over so many times. But with shotguns, I do think VATS is more consistent. The theming around cripple limbs is also something that I really love, though I'm not sure how effective it is to focus on, rather than just focusing on, I'll just shoot them in the head, especially if you're going on the VATS route. The crippling and stuff and how that all ties together and there's multiple perks which synergize with each other seems great, and I think on stronger enemies could be quite powerful, but I don't think it's actually that strong to go for if you're more of a casual player like me. If there is someone out there who's big on shotguns and crippling, please do leave your thoughts and stuff in the comments below, as I do have a feeling this might be something where if you're really into it, you can make it work, but more casually, it's not much to go on. Overall though, it was fun. I very much did enjoy my time with shotguns. It's definitely a playstyle where I think you'd need to dedicate more time and more focus to make it work properly, but even as someone casual, it's just satisfying to go boom, and my god Bethesda, bring the pump action shotgun to the next single player Fallout game. We need that so much. It is one of the coolest weapons to use. We better get it in Fallout 5. I've only got a few more builds to go over now, and here we'll be covering energy weapons. You can see my perks on screen, and this category really comes about from the science perk, which makes it so that your damage with energy weapons scales with intelligence. That means I was able to use a few different energy weapons that were different types. I had my alien blaster pistol, I had an automatic ultrasight laser rifle, and I had like a flamer modded plasma rifle, which is really nice because those normally would be subject to 3 different perks. Especially in like Fallout 4 I'd be dealing with Rifleman, Commando and Gunslinger, whereas this time around it's just like science, and you get all 3, which I love. That being said, I had real problems with this one. Incredibly severe problems. First off, there was a Scorch Beast that just kept running away from me. Like seriously, you won't be able to watch this whole clip, but there's multiple minutes of me trying to kill this Scorch Beast, and it just keeps leaving, and other enemies show up, and it just will not land, will not get close, absolute problem. I then gave up on chasing the Scorch Beast, because a nuke was launched at Monongah Mine, and a colossal problem started. So I went over there, waited a few minutes for the actual event to start, then the game crashed. Yeah. So once I actually got to play the build properly, it was pretty decent. The science perk, scaling with everything, is really good, because it feels like I can have multiple weapon types for different jobs and different situations. Having the pistol is like quite nift and big pew pew, quick and nimble. The flamethrower is great for when enemies get up close, can just blast them away without worrying. And the automatic rifle is great for crowds or when I just want to do really strong DPS. It's a much more versatile playstyle than you'd get if you dedicate yourself just to one specific weapon type. That being said, my alien blaster felt a tad disappointing. I'm not sure if I've ever used this weapon, but it felt like the shots weren't really connecting very well, and I don't know what that was about. So anyone who's used the alien blaster a lot, tell me if I'm missing out on something there. Overall though, energy weapons are good. And I feel like with the science perk and the damage scaling with intelligence, there's definitely got to be some crazy way to really min-max the damage by just boosting your intelligence ridiculously high. Penultimate build now is the bow build. Here are my perks, and I feel at this point I should point out that the bow perks were some of the first perks that were actually added to Fallout 76. Before we had all the changes and drastic reworks and stuff, we just had a few bow perks added to make bows a bit stronger, and I was excited just when that happened. In terms of my weapon, it's a bow. Could you have guessed? Okay, the one really cool thing about the bow is you can mod it to be a different type of arrow that it shoots, and that's just, I love it. I'm someone who's played a lot of the Far Cry games, and one of the reasons I loved playing bow and arrow archer in that was because you can switch out to different arrows and stuff. And while you can't switch on the go in Fallout 76, you can still mod it out Workbench. I went with poison arrows because they seem cool and I wanted to be stealthy. The other reason I really love archery in these games is because I'm an IRL archer. I was raised as a medieval reenactor and spent a lot of my childhood shooting a bow and arrow, so I'm really experienced with this. Like, so much so that I really don't like it in the game. Archery in Fallout 76 kind of sucks, and there's a few weird reasons for this. One that isn't objectively bad, but does feel odd to me, is that your character becomes left-handed when wielding a bow. They hold the bow in the right hand, which is not what you do if you're a right-handed archer. You hold it in your left hand and you draw the string with your right hand, because that's where you need the strength to come from, because if you're using a high poundage bow, which you're going to do if you're doing combat, then you need a lot of strength to draw that string back. So immediately it's just a little odd, but that wouldn't be like a huge issue. Another thing that's not a huge issue, but which is a little bit annoying, is that the bow gets in the way while you're sprinting in first person. The animation actually looks really good in third person, but if you sprint in first person, you've just got this bow, whacking you in the face. Those are two minor gripes. The major one is aiming. You cannot manually aim with the bow at all. I even modded on the little iron sights to it, and I was like, perfect, they'll let me line up my shot nice and simple. We know how to do this is easy. Nuh-uh. I'll have footage of me showing that when you try to aim with the sights, you shoot nowhere near them. The sights are just nowhere near where your arrow goes. I also play without the little crosshair on the middle of screen, because generally it makes footage look a bit nicer and a bit cleaner. You can't do it. You can't do it with the bow. If you're playing with the bow, you have to have the crosshair, and even then, it's gonna be kinda tricky. Now the bow, it can work if you're basically exclusively using bats, because it is kind of strong as a weapon. It sort of feels like a close-range sniper, especially because it makes no real noise. You can mod it into the stealth side of things and get like big multipliers. I think I was on a 4.5 times stealth attack multiplier, and there's some really cool perk cards around it, one of them giving you a bounce effect, where if you shoot your arrow, it bounces to multiple enemies. And I got multi-kills with that at multiple points. I've said mult too much, but that was really good. And the fact that a lot of these perks as well don't work just for the bow, but with throwing knives and other similar things, just, it's a really nice thematic sort of feeling to it. I'd love to play as a proper hunter character who just uses bows and knives, and it'd be great. It'd be such a cool thing to do. But it was ruined for me by the whole aiming stuff. And it's wild because Bethesda made Skyrim, where bows work fine. It's easy to aim with them. I've got amazing shots with these bows, and they don't even have fancy sights to potentially make it easier. Bethesda just messed up bows here, where they got them right years ago. If you want to play this build, then either go just for that and accept that it's a VATS build, or use the crossbow. Crossbow will probably work out a bit better, so there's potential for it, but I think this is probably the worst of all of them that we've covered so far. And final of the builds, explosives only. So here are the perks, obviously Demolition Expert being the big one you want to go for, and there's a few other ones for like further range with throwables, bigger explosion radius, all of that stuff. In terms of weapons, as well as just the grenades you have, there are like little grenade launchers you can have for 40mm, missile launchers, and of course the Fat Man. So let's be real here, this is a bit of a meme build. It's very much like a challenge run style of character. It's not something you'd normally just play as a standard playthrough. But I knew that going in, and I was happy to see that it still does reasonable damage. You can kill most enemies with a single shot because you're using heavy explosive weaponry. But it's not really realistic to use this as your go-to all the time, because of ammo issues. Like this is the only character where I flat out ran out with ammo. Carry weight, because all of these bits of ammo weigh. Like missiles and mini nukes in particular weigh multiple, I think they're like 2 and 6 a piece. Super heavy. And the overall clunkiness of it. They're very slow firing, basically have to reload all the time. The weapons are heavy, so it'll take you a while to aim and shoot, and just, it's never going to be particularly good. That is the way it should be though. Explosives are more of like a support damage type rather than the primary one. So the fact that this wasn't a particularly good build is the way it should be, considering how I tried to do it as explosives only. That being said, I do feel like the Fat Man could maybe be buffed a little bit. It's such an iconic weapon and it should be like really quite strong, whereas it felt like it was fine and I would have done just as good with like an automatic weapon or something. That being said, I do have memories of the early days of Fallout 76, where like modders and hackers and people glitching and stuff would just shoot infinite Merv Fatmans and crash entire servers. So maybe we don't need to buff it. That all being said, if you do want to factor explosives into your build, the best way to do a explosive theme build is to have a fast firing weapon with the explosive legendary effect, because that's really the way to make this actually viable. Because just going with pure explosives, not going to work, but definitely can work with just explosive effect. Final thoughts on it all? No build was completely worthless. There's definitely some which are stronger than others. I think the more simple ones like Commando and Heavy Gunner, the DPS focused ones still feel a little bit stronger, but with high damage, especially melee and unarmed, you can definitely still be strong. The explosives only and the bow were definitely the worst of the two, and those are for very specific sort of reasons. Honestly, I feel like any player could pick up any playstyle and get on fairly well with it. Even if you're not going to be like super strong on the meta and one-shot killing everything all the time, you're still going to have a good time, and nothing feels inherently weak. There's definitely ways to make every sort of build work, which is exactly what I want to see. They're not all 100% balanced to be even, but I never expect that to be the case. This is probably the best it's been since launch for Fallout 76. It does really feel like any sort of weapon could potentially be viable, and that is brilliant. I love to see it. It's great. It actually makes me feel like I can play around with different things and don't have to focus on the meta, which I love so much. Thank you, meta, for leaving. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, feel free to like, subscribe, do all the YouTube stuff. More than anything though, leave your thoughts in the comments below. I'm assuming pretty much everyone watching is a Fallout 76 player, so let me know in the comments what your sort of build you uses and what you really like about it and what you think needs to change. I'd be interested to hear that too. That's going to be it for me though, so as always, thanks for watching. Sarge out.